My name is Nicholas Mitchell. I use he, him pronouns. I am a computer science major who is also studying math and data science as minors. Oh, and I'm a junior.
Okay, and Faustina?
Hi everyone, my name is Faustina Obusu. I'm a senior computer science major and also a math and Asian studies minor. And I also use she, her pronouns.
And Naomi?
Hello, I'm Naomi. I'm a senior studying computer science and economics with a minor in data science, and I use she, her pronouns.
Okay. I'm so excited and happy that you guys wanted to spend your night with us. And so the first question I'm going to start off with is, how did you pick your majors? Or kind of just to rephrase the question, were you always interested in computer science? And if you weren't, like what changed your mind? And we'll give you a couple of seconds to wrap your head around the responses. And whoever would like to go, just go for it.
I can go first if other people are still thinking. I knew from high school that I wanted to be a computer science major, but before so in high school I took a independent computer science class because there wasn't one offered at my school, but I took one independently online during my senior year. And before that, I didn't really know what I was interested in. I knew I liked the idea of computer science. I liked the sound of it because I like computers, but I hadn't really had any exposure to it, and I hadn't really I didn't even really know what it meant. So I had no clue if I was interested in it or not. So like when college counselors would come in and, or like when colleges would come in and be like, oh, what are you interested in? I would have no clue like what to say because I don't even know what computer science is. So saying I'm interested in it doesn't make any sense. But after taking a class in high school in Python, I really liked it. And so I decided to study it in college. And the more I've learned about it, the more I've liked it. So that's kind of been how I got introduced to it. But I had a background in math in high school, and that was the thing that came the easiest to me. And so that's part of what drove me in this direction.
I could go next. So coming to Clark originally, I did decide to be a computer science major coming into Clark, but that wasn't my original intention. So I actually want to be an actuarial scientist, and we needed computer science as one of the skills. So that's why I chose computer science when it came to Clark, to at least get that skill and get it out of the way. But then as I started taking more courses, I started to fall more in love with it. And I took some math classes and I realized that I do like math, but not to the extent that I want to make it as a career compared to computer science. And so because of that, I basically just stuck with it. And then also because computer science is just 4 years and then you're basically done, if that makes sense. Whereas actual science, even after you're done graduating, like you still have to take exams and stuff like that. And I'm not really a good test taker. So I was like, you know what? There's a lot of cons to be an actuarial scientist and a lot of pros to be a computer scientist. So let me just stick with computer science.
I came into Clark like completely sure I knew exactly what I was doing with my life, and I was going to be a political science person who was involved like mainly with like community engagement. I was really interested in like city level politics and zoning laws and just how policies get made and how we can help people without it being like all the background of how policies are made. I took a lot of political science classes, and I thought that I should be an economics major so I would know like how to make economic sense of the policies I'd be looking at and how to argue for policies, knowing the language and knowing how to communicate about it. And then I took this security class that was a political science security class, and I had to write a paper about a security threat, and I chose to write about artificial intelligence. And as I was reading different papers about AI, I had no idea how to communicate about it, what it was, and I was really curious. So I decided to take an intro CS class thinking that it would teach me everything there was to know about AI and like, give me like the stuff, all the like the secret keys to understand what these people were talking about. And I just kept going and kept following that curiosity. And so I ended up realizing I needed to just keep pursuing the understanding the computer science knowledge, and decided to take a break from political science just to really get more hands-on exposure to CS. And now I really like it because it really gives you some hands-on skills, and it's very applicable to pretty much any sphere you could go into after college.
So exciting to see all of your diverse backgrounds and interests. I'm sure we'll get into that later on. So my second question for today is, what has been your favorite class you've taken at Clark so far? This could be computer science or out of computer science. So-
I guess I could go. Um, so I have two actually, one computer science and one non-computer science. So for comp sci, I'll probably say Android Studio, because for me, like I always use apps, whether it's Twitter or Instagram and stuff like that. So like taking this course, it was pretty interesting, kind of just knowing how apps were built and like the whole like thought process and work that actually went into building one. And also like just being able to build your own app and be able to call it your own was just something that I really enjoyed. Um, and also now that I look at apps, I'm like, all right, this UI is terrible. This needs to change. This could be, I'm always being like a bit nitpicky because of that class. It's a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. And for a non-computer science class that I actually did enjoy too was creative actor. Um, that class was just something, but it was very interesting. I always had fun. I was always laughing, and it really put me outside of my comfort zone and had me doing things that I really wouldn't have thought myself of doing. So yeah.
I can go next. So I think one of my favorite classes I've taken was the Introduction to Data Science class, because it was not that as someone with a background in programming, it was not that like rigorous of a like deep concepts, but it covered a lot of really interesting like a breadth of interesting concepts, and every single project was super like relatively easy and fast and gave some tangible result that was that made you feel like you'd done something like useful. So you would be given a big chunk of data and you would make graphs out of it, or you would like find trends in it. And the whole class ended with a big final project where we could do whatever we wanted, but we were given the tools and knowledge to like for my project, I took Twitter data, and I took coronavirus data, and I looked at trends between the spread of coronavirus and the amount that climate change was being talked about on Twitter, to see if it was having an impact on where the public focus was. And so just like in a very short amount of time with not that many new skills I had to learn, I was able to create a lot of really cool things and build on a lot of skills I already had. And I really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the amount of like payoff that I had for the amount of time that I put in. Because if you're working on a big project and you don't have much to show for it, that always doesn't feel great. But if every little thing you do, you have something to show for it, that's really rewarding, and that's really what I'm doing computer science for.
I really, is maybe an unpopular choice, but I actually really enjoyed algorithms, um, because it is a really difficult class, and it's like it can be a painful class where, you're in it and you're like, this sucks. But then you're working through these projects that are really hands-on, and there's this like, you've probably encountered it in this class already, but when you're working on a project and nothing's working and everything's breaking, and it's just like, it's the worst feeling, and you're so frustrated, and then you think you have a solution, and then you have tons of bugs in the code, but then when you finally do get it and it passes the tests, it's such an exhilarating moment that I feel like the class made me grow a lot in ways that since then I've been stronger for the more fun classes like mobile development, that sort of thing. Is way more fun once you feel more competent. So I would say that even though it wasn't the most fun class, I think I got it like the most out of it, and I ended up enjoying it a lot because of the projects, like pushing through with them. And I also really liked the urban economics class I did with my advisor for economics, where you go into like understanding the economics of cities and just like talking about pizza shops, and you draw a lot of pictures, and it was just a lot of fun to dive into that.
Okay, that's great. I guess in a way to kind of connect what classes they're talking about to what we're doing in class. So MIT's App Inventor is kind of like the entry level of Android Studio that Faustina mentioned, which is part of our higher level classes that are normally offered for juniors and seniors in the CS major / minor. And kind of just going off of the recommended or the most fun classes, I definitely would have to agree that mobile development is kind of really fun, just to see that you making your own app and being able to use different like design softwares to kind of see the combination of where everything overlaps. And then a non-CS class that I really liked was actually in the entrepreneurship department. Um, that one was called Entrepreneurial Communications and Influence. It really brought me out of my shell a little bit more of like having to do tons of presentations and just having to interact and getting to interact with other people in other majors in different years. So I thought that was really fun. Okay, and my next question is, are you involved in any clubs that are related to CS or tech? And then what other of your interests, like involvement on club campus?
I am involved with TIE, which is a club that sometimes has a big presence, sometimes doesn't, but they hold events related to technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And so I am their like opportunities coordinator to help people find access to conferences.
I am a part of Clark University ACM, which basically stands for Association of Computing Machinery, and it's a whole organization nationwide within the United States and also outside of the US. And basically, it's basically just like a lot of like CS people who come together, try to find new CS technology that's out there or anything new in the CS world. And it's basically just like our job to just tell everybody, whether they CS or non CS, about it. And it's also about like a lot of connections and just helping each other be able to just grow within the CS realm.
Um, I have also been a part of TIE in the past. I was specifically working on the Innovation Hub, which is part of why I haven't been as much of a part of it recently, because the virus really slowed things down with that, along with some other factors. But definitely, there's a lot of opportunities outside of just CS related clubs to introduce CS into your club experience, because I know that a lot of people get involved in clubs working on websites or other projects outside of just like as part of a music club. I can work on a project that would help that club function better through my knowledge in CS. And so there's definitely a lot of opportunities outside of just CS related clubs to bring skills that you learn in CS as a major.
Okay. And so my next question for you all is, what are hackathons? And do you have any advice for someone who hasn't coded very much for them?
So a hackathon is just usually it's a 24 to 36-hour event. Right now, they're all held online because of coronavirus, but in the past, they would be held usually at a university. So you might travel to a local university in Worcester, or you might go pretty far afield. They're all over the country in Chicago and California. They have some huge ones. Some Clark students have gone to MIT and Harvard. I've gone to one at Wellesley, and they are an opportunity for people to gather and work together on projects for a short period of time. And there are prizes if your project is one that you can catch the eye of some judge and you pitch on the very last day your project you've been working on with a few other students, and you hope that they like it, and maybe if they do, you get a prize. And sometimes they're really cool. And sometimes you don't win anything. So I think that the best thing to do when going into them is to commit, like fully commit to, I'm here for 24 hours, I'm here for 36 hours. Even if you don't know anything, like my first time going to a hackathon was probably the most fun hackathon I ever had, because I didn't know any better. Like I didn't expect anything from it. I was just there. And so if you just like fully commit to being there with like your friends, being there to meet new people, there are a lot of vendors you can go talk to. And I remember I had a bunch of questions and I went up to some vendors who were there to like help mentor. And they ended up helping me and my group for like 2 to 3 hours, just like helping us and talking to us. And it was so much fun. And you would never expect like something like that where you're working on a project to be fun, but it was. And they had like tons of free snacks. So we got like free boba and just like a bunch of free food, which is a lot of fun. We stayed up way too late. And that was my experience. My advice would be to commit to the experience, even if you don't win anything. If you've already had fun in the process, you won't care.
I can go next. I totally agree that it's a really, really good experience. Definitely. So I've been to a couple hackathons, and I've never been overly successful at a hackathon, but it's always more the connections I make and the new experiences I have are really what makes it worthwhile. Um, so going to a hackathon is a little bit intimidating. Both of the ones I've gone to have been 48-hour hackathons, so it really eats your entire weekend. So like in these situations, I would leave on Friday, sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the mid-afternoon. I would spend a lot of time traveling. You could often get student council to fund traveling, but also right now when they're all digital, that's not really an issue. So there are some really good benefits to that. Also, you get to like stay in your home, which is pretty great, because having to go to some weird place and find somewhere to sleep on a floor where there's probably like lights on and people all around you is a little bit weird. But hackathons are often not big on the sleeping aspect. They're more on the just caffeinating you that so you don't sleep for 48 hours, which is not the most healthy thing, but it is very, very fun when you're surrounded with a bunch of people who haven't slept in a really long time and are just furiously trying to build something. And so there are opportunities to sleep and stuff, but most of what you're experiencing is you're going into a situation in a weird location, meeting all these new people, kind of making all these connections with people from all kinds of different backgrounds, all kinds of different schools, tons of different majors and experiences, because you can have people who are in any major really. Like it doesn't really have to be CS related in any way, but even within the CS community, you can have another person who's the same class as you, same field as you, and they haven't taken a single class that overlaps with yours. Like you have some basic understanding and similar, but all of the things that you've taken more in-depth classes on, they haven't, and they've taken in-depth classes on totally different things. And so there's a lot of diverse perspectives and kind of skills that you'll be introduced to. And what you're doing is you're taking all these skills that all these random people have, and you're throwing them all together to work on something that you have no clue how to do, and something that's way over your head. And it's really kind of intimidating at first, but you get to see a lot of what goes into making a project happen and what is possible for you to do. And it shows you that there's so much more to computer science as a subject than what you necessarily learn in classes. And most of it you can just teach yourself. And the biggest experience I had was freshman year when I went to a hackathon. I don't mean to go on for so long, but there was a junior from NYU who was helping me, or actually from Columbia, sorry, who was helping me. And she was really just giving me little breadcrumbs to lead me on to little things that I could learn. So I wasn't contributing that much to the project overall, but I really just found a mentor who was then able to teach me lots of new skills and lead me to find new areas of interest that I had never really seen before. So whether you're succeeding in winning prizes or not, your world will be opened up and you'll get a lot of new opportunities and new exciting things to pursue.
Honestly, Naomi and Nick basically just said everything. Honestly, like hackathons are a great experience. They're extremely, extremely fun. And an advice that I would give basically to all you guys is just, is that to me? Oh, sorry, just seeing a question. Let me first answer Violet's question and then I'll answer David's question. So basically, like an advice that I would give you guys is to take advantage of everything that goes on in hackathons and to just like make the most out of basically everything that's going on. I know for me, when I went to hackathons, the first hackathon I went to was same as Naomi at Wesley College. Honestly, did not know what I was doing, even though I did have, even though I did take some CS classes. I honestly did not know how to apply it to whatever project that I was making. And to be honest, it was a hot mess, but it was still a good experience because I was able to talk to a few people. I got free boba, a lot of free food. And basically I was just able to learn a lot of things and it was just amazing. And then after that, I basically learned what to do and what not to do at hackathons. But honestly, you make a lot of new friends. Like I know there's some people that I met at hackathons that like I connected to on LinkedIn or like I'm still talking to and follow on Instagram and stuff like that. And was also able to learn new skills. It's just amazing. Hackathons are fun. And then David's question, what are hackathons type of events brought up by Clark this year or next year? To be honest, I know that Clark did want to have a hackathon in the past, but because of like funding and stuff like that, and the time that we wanted to plan the hackathons, it kind of wasn't possible. But hopefully, I don't know if Ty still wants to plan some hackathons, but hopefully in the future, Clark will have some hackathons. But we'll see how it goes. I don't know what
I can just
Nick.
Sorry, I have some information to share. So I think Thai has general interest of offering hackathon when it's possible with time and the funding. And some departments are also interested in offering some business-related hackathons with our department together, but that'll be next academic year. This year, we need time for planning and hopefully also find some sponsors that can give out prize. So we'll keep you updated. Thank you.
Oh. So we have another question in the chat. Just hold on a second. We'll come back to that. But rule of thumb, I guess, or one thing that you could take away from this question specifically is whether you become a CS major or minor, go to a hackathon, virtual or in person. It's going to be fun. Yes, tons of free food. You may or may not sleep. Who knows? But there's also a bunch of workshops as well that a lot of them feature. So you can learn a bit of Python. You can learn a bit of like app development a little bit more, or just something random that you never really thought. Okay, and then my last question, and then we'll open up for Q&A, is what advice would you give your younger self about trying a new class or thing outside of your comfort zone? I know we kind of touched on this a little bit.
Oh, Rosina, you can go first. Okay. I would say when I was a freshman and through sophomore year, I was pretty nervous to email professors I had never talked to. or talk to professors I had never been introduced to, had a class with, just because I thought it'd be weird. They wouldn't, like, it would just be I don't know, like I was intimidated by it, and I wish I had been more willing to email professors when a class was full, but I was really interested in it. More willing to email professors. Honestly, I did email professors I didn't know, and it usually worked out. Like there's a professor, Professor McGee, and before Hackathon, I needed a piece of like hardware, and I ended up knocking on his door and being like, "Can I borrow your hardware for a hackathon?" And he let me. So, and he didn't miss. But in general, for classes being full, I wish I had been willing to email people and ask if I could have like the cap waived. And then also, I really didn't believe in myself in terms of like math skills. I thought that my brain was not made for math. And honestly, sometimes I do have like a Tom Brady moment where I'm holding up like 4, and I think it's the fourth, like our fourth down, and it's over, it's past. So sometimes my math skills are still lacking, but I really didn't believe in myself in terms of math skills. And I thought that computer science classes were only for people who knew how to, they had already taken a lot of math classes or were like math oriented. So I guess that would be one of the things I tell my was that you can do things you don't think you can, and to be patient.
Honestly, I was the same as Naomi freshman year. Shy, nervous, and especially being a freshman in college, like it was just something. I remember the first day I went to my first CS class and I looked behind me and I saw like a few upperclassmen. I was like, oh wow, this can be great. But honestly, an advice that I would tell my younger self is to like, I guess just not be nervous. Because I know that like during class, there'd be some questions that I would have, but I would be too afraid to ask them. And at the end, it would just bite me in the ass because I didn't ask the question. And it literally would have helped me on some of the assignments that were given. And it would have saved me so much time and so much effort. Um, and so because of that, I kind of regret not asking a lot of questions back in freshman year, sophomore year, because I was just too nervous and too scared. But I realized that whether it's a stupid question or not, still ask it because someone else might have that same question as we all heard before. Um, and also, you're helping yourself because you're in college for yourself. So if someone has a problem with the questions that you're asking, sucks. They're gonna have to deal with it. Um, and then kind of also what Naomi said too is just believe in yourself because I know that especially with some of the classes that I've taken with Lehan, she would ask a lot of questions and sometimes I would know the answer, right? And I'm like, all right, the answer is this, but I won't say it. And someone else will say the same exact answer. And I'm like, damn, like I probably should have said it. And a lot of times during freshman and sophomore year, I would tend to doubt myself. So one thing would be to like kind of like when Naomi said, believe in myself, to not doubt and to trust your instincts. And even if the answer that I do get is wrong, at least you're learning why it's wrong. And yeah.
Yeah, and to um go off of kind of what Faustina was saying about asking questions, and Naomi as well, about like asking questions and not being afraid to ask for help. I think one of the good parts of our computer science department here is that we have really, really good TAs. And we have a lot of TAs generally, especially for like intro classes and um, like the higher level it gets, the less TAs we have. But still, we have a pretty good amount of people who are willing to help you and are there for you. And also, I know personally, I'm a tutor with the academic, what's it called? I forget the name of it. The Peer Success uh, thing. I forget what it's called. What the office is called.
Q Center.
The Q Center. But that's normally based in the library. But this year it's been all online. But I see a lot of students there, and we've been encouraging more CS students to get involved in that. So there's a lot of resources out there to make sure that you never really are getting stuck. Because one of the biggest things that I've learned during my time in CS is the first time you learn something, it won't make sense. Like it might make a little bit of sense, but it's not going to make a whole lot of sense. But the first time you're learning a concept, because most like computer science is a weird field because it's one of the only fields that you come into college and you may have never done anything in it before. Like math, at least you've like seen math before when you come to college, but computer science, you might have never done anything like it. So the first time you're learning some of these new concepts, it might make absolutely no sense at all. But the main purpose of it is you try your best and you see how that concept is used. And even if it doesn't really make sense, that's okay, because in the future, you're going to learn that concept again, because almost every computer science class is in some way going to teach you that concept again, but a little bit faster than the last time. But because you've already messed with that concept before and used it before, when they give you the explanation of what it's doing a second time, you'll suddenly be like, oh, I remember I was using this to do this. So now it starts to make more sense. And every time you get reintroduced to a concept that you've been taught before, it makes just a little bit more sense. And so just because something might seem overwhelming when you're, let's say you're in 120 and you're, getting to a really hard topic that just like is totally, your mind is not getting it at all. I've been there. Everyone's been there. That's just part of computer science. And just try your best. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And once you go back and you get a good understanding of it, which you always will when you're reintroduced to those concepts later, it'll feel amazing, and you'll really have a great understanding of this really fun field that we're in.
Awesome. Okay, so that is the end of my questions, and now we're going to open it up for Q&A. And I guess we will start with Giancarlo's question about what is an example of a hackathon project?
So to answer that question, honestly, anything could be a hackathon project. Yeah, so like for me, out of the few hackathons that I've been to, one of them I built an app that basically it's supposed to be like an environmental app that basically like checks the weathers and like any places that have natural disasters, and it will basically like inform you about the natural disaster, how it happened, why it's happening, and like some of the things to basically mitigate that natural disaster. And then another one that I built was a website which basically helps those who are looking for jobs be able to like basically compare their resume to the job description of the job that they want to apply to and see like what skills they have and what skills they don't have. And then based off of that, the skills that they don't have, the website will basically provide them the resources to gain those skills so that they can then, after they gain it, add it to the resume and then apply for that job. So there's like the few projects that you can basically build at a hackathon. And also, depending on which hackathon you go to, each of them has different themes. And for example, like you have environmental projects, you have I forgot the themes. I know there are themes for each prize and for each hackathon. It's not coming to me right now, but definitely whichever hackathon that you want to go to, definitely check out the website for the hackathon, and you can look at the prizes, and it will show you different categories that you can build that project to coincide with, if that makes sense. But yeah.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off that, I don't remember the names of the themes either, but there's mostly what they're asking you to do is just think of a problem and solve it somehow. And that's the overall idea. And the specific like ways that they're trying to direct you is they say, okay, well, if you use the Google platform, you qualify for a Google Prize. Or if you do a project related to social good, then you qualify for a prize from this company or something like that, or you qualify for a hackathon prize. And so like there's environmental, social, what other ones are there? There was one that was like a health related hackathon that had to do with like finding health hacks or like healthcare related hacks, I guess. And so really every hackathon can be different, but if you just have any ideas or any problems in mind that you want to solve, a hackathon is a great place to like take a swing at finding a way to solve it.
Okay, it looks like we also have another question in the chat from Elena. Do you have to apply to attend a hackathon? Well, most of the time you do have to fill out like a form, and sometimes they use the word apply for that, but a lot of times it ends up being like a first come first serve type of deal. Like the earlier apply, the better chance you have of getting a spot. But now that they're they're all online for the foreseeable future, yeah, you kind of just fill out the form and then you get the confirmation.
And to kind of add on to what Violet said, for someone like the higher up, I guess, hackathons, such as the one at Harvard and MIT and stuff like that, the applications are a bit, like the application process is a bit more rigorous because everybody wants to get in. So for that one, you kind of can get rejected. At the same time, you kind of can't get rejected. That did not make sense. So you can and cannot. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that yes, you can get rejected, or yes, they can accept you. That was the word I was going for, accept. But then some like the ones at like WPI or Wesley or like NYU, those kind of like what Violet said, like you just apply just to kind of like save your spot, and so that they can have like a head count in terms of how many people are attending the event, so that they can plan accordingly.
And just to add on to that really quickly, I know that like for me, the first time I was applying to one, I was really scared that I was going to get rejected just because like I I didn't know how to do computer science like at all. I'd taken like one class and I was in the middle of my second class and I barely even started coding really, to be honest. But the thing is they aren't just going to look at like, you know, oh, well, we're only accepting people that have been to 50 hackathons before. No, they want people who this is their first hackathon. That's actually, I think, if you've gone to a hackathon, you might actually be less likely in some cases to get in than someone who hasn't, because they want people who it's their first hackathon. They want people to have this new experience, and they don't only want people who have, you know, gone to every hackathon that's been happening for the past 2 years. You know, so definitely there are slots reserved for newcomers, and it's not something you need to be afraid of. It's really the idea of building a community where there are mentors and students and everyone's coming together to learn new things.
I hope that answered your question, Elena. And if anyone else has questions, yep, just put it in the chat, or you can even raise your hand and verbally say your question. I guess a little bit more about hackathons too, kind of going off of the themes. There's also hackathons geared to like women and non-binary as well, depending on what's going on. I know some groups like Hacker, which is through UMass Amherst. They do a few other hackathons as well that are like that are more open in terms of gender, as well as what other ones? There's a few other ones that are specific to just building more of a community in smaller. Yes, there is one in Boston. Yeah. I think it's Tech Together is one of them for sure. Ooh. We have another question. Ooh. What aspects about the CS field did you find intimidating?
I can go first on this one. I personally like there's so much in it. It's always expanding. And there's always just new stuff. And sometimes you'll have a small question and you'll look it up, and the answer will be like a really long thread of people over explaining something that makes no sense, that isn't really answering the question that you have. And so just some people have a very good understanding of computer science, but that doesn't mean that they have a really good understanding of how to explain computer science. So there's definitely a barrier of entry, and that's why I definitely think that doing computer science at Clark is a good thing in general, because there's a lot of people in the community that are willing to support you and help you figure out the issues that you're having, or solve these problems that you encounter. Because if you're doing it on your own, it can be really, really tough. Because there's a million different things that are all very similar, but all work slightly differently. And there's not always an answer out there that's exactly going to help you. So having people who are experienced around you, who can give you a helping hand and lead you in the right direction, is just gonna make life a lot easier. So definitely, I think the learning curve on the subject is really frightening for me. But if you have a supportive community that you're part of, then you can definitely overcome it.
For me, specifically in the CS field, basically for me, it's kind of a little bit like in between after college. Well, in the process of about to be after college. So like what I mean is that like the interview process. I know for me, doing a lot of like interviews, especially for CS and like software engineer positions, that was extremely intimidating for me because like yeah, the things that I do in class are for class, but the thing is, the reason why it was a bit intimidating is because I really couldn't use the resources that I had if it was like a school project or something like that. And so like I'll be there and like a lot also like what made it even more intimidating is that I was very nervous. I was starting to doubt myself. I was like, oh my gosh, like do I know these like algorithms? Do I know these CS terms and stuff like that? And because like the person has been working in the field for so long, it felt like I don't know, it just felt very nerve-wracking. It was very intimidating. It was very difficult, but after a while, you just kind of get used to it. After doing multiple interviews, you're like, you know what, it is what it is, and you just go head on and just basically just conquer it at this point. And I know Nia asked a question about what is it like to be a woman in the CS field. Nia, that is a great question. It's I don't even know how to explain it. To be a woman in the CS field, it's nice. I don't want to say nice is a nice word. It's challenging. That's a good term. It's challenging. The reason why I say it's challenging is because, especially me being from freshman year to sophomore year, junior year, there started to be more women in the CS department, which was great. But freshman and sophomore year for me, it was a bit of a challenge because it was me and like two other women, and there really weren't that much, and so just be dominated by males, and that in itself was hard. It was very intimidating, especially because I didn't have enough CS knowledge. But after a while, you kind of just have to start trusting yourself. And honestly, sometimes you got to put some of these men in their places and just dominate the room, if that makes sense. And yeah, just make a name for yourself. It can be hard at first. Like the first couple of times is very nerve wracking, but after a while, I kind of get used to it. And next thing you know, like you're a woman literally conquering the CS field. You're doing great things. So yeah, Violet could probably has some things to say.
Yes, I definitely agree with what Faustina was saying about sometimes it definitely is intimidating when it's only like you and like two other women, and it's like the first day of class. You sit down and you're like, okay, who else is gonna be in my class? Do I see any other women? Like, this is great. And then you find like two people and you're like, okay, good. And then at least I have somewhere else. So if it is like a community sense, like you have those other people with you. So you're not gonna be alone. Well, definitely not anymore. I definitely saw the increase in women being involved in CS, and especially going to hackathons as well. I saw that a lot more, and it just made me very, very happy to see that involvement grow. Um, in terms of individual classes at Clark, um, I don't necessarily find it as an obstacle. It's definitely something you have to get used to. Um, but it's not as bad as you may think, if that makes sense. Okay. All right. Did anyone else have any other questions? Ooh. Okay, we have another question. What different tracks or specializations does CS have in Clark once you begin taking classes in the major or minor, or as a major or minor? That's a good question.
So so there isn't really any tracks, to be honest. There's more just standard classes that are offered on a rotating basis. So each class is generally, or each 200 level class is offered like every 2 years, I think, or so, or every other year. And there's a bunch of different little areas that you can go into within those classes, but there aren't really enough different classes that you can that we have specific concentrations or anything. If you really were so inclined, you could almost take all of the classes during your time. But if you want to follow other things such as like math or data science or music or theater or something like that, then you're not going to be able to fit them all in. So you kind of do generate more of a specialization, such as like for me, most of the classes that I focus on are more related to software engineering or like app and website development, like stuff related to that, where I'm actually building things. Whereas the more theory-based classes, I generally am not as interested in and don't take as highly. So you can really like, if you're more interested in theory and like building really complicated algorithms and stuff, there's a lot of classes related to things like that, or the more mathy side of computer science. And if you're more interested in slightly higher level building things and working on UI and stuff like that, there's also classes related to that you can take. So there's kind of, once you start taking more classes and you see what aspects of computer science you're enjoying and what aspects you aren't enjoying quite as much, you can kind of figure out what classes are more similar to those. Yeah, thank you, Violet. I appreciate that. Yeah, so whatever you enjoy the most in your earlier classes can kind of help guide you to what classes are going to be the best fit for you.
To answer David's questions about like outside resources, there are a lot of outside resources. One of them is Code Academy. I could also write these in the chat too. So Code Academy, General Assembly is also another one that I used. I mostly use that to build websites and stuff like that. But I'm pretty sure they also have other things that you could use on their platform to basically learn more. Yeah, so Code Academy, General Assembly is all I have at the top of my head. I'm pretty sure Nick or Violet has more outside resources.
LeetCode is another website that gives a bunch of like coding questions that they categorize as easy, medium, and hard, but they kind of are a little iffy on that. But they're similar to questions that you would get in classes like 121, which is data structures, or 160, which is algorithms, and more. Really, it expands outside of that also. But it's got thousands of questions that have been asked by like interviews for different big companies. It also just has a lot of common questions that help reinforce different pieces of knowledge. So if you are trying to like practice your more intense skills as a coder, that's a really good way to prep for interviews or get more used to problem solving using coding. But also it's definitely a little bit of a like laborious task. You have to like they take a while and they can be pretty confusing and frustrating sometimes. So that's definitely not what I would suggest for everyone.
Another one I can think of is Free Code Camp. A similar format to like Code Academy. And then also something that recently was brought up from Clark is the LinkedIn learnings. They actually have like video classes that you can take that are based on like the coding language, whether that be Java, Python. They even have stuff on data science and like project management, like the vastness of like the variety is like it's huge. So you could really just go on there, and it's free through Clark to like learn something new that is kind of easy. Oh, and also YouTube. YouTube is a great resource. Just search a specific phrase that you're looking for, and then watch as many videos as possible, like coding walkthroughs and what are other ones? They just have like crash courses almost for topics you want to learn.
I just wanted to quickly second that and say, like, if you ever have like some area of coding that you're interested in, if you can just find the name of a program that it's written in or something like that, like if you want to know how to build apps and you just are like, look up like, how do you build apps or something like that, like you can find whole YouTube tutorials where they from the ground up just show you how to do everything to like make an example app. And that's a really great resource for kind of like jumping into new things. Like I enjoy that a lot. I think that I wish I was more motivated to follow more of them, but definitely that's a great way to get yourself exposed to new ideas and new workplaces. So never undervalue YouTube.